Hello, Aethon readers and authors. My name is John Chambers with Aethon Books. So excited to talk to you today. We have Jamie McFarlane, who's about to come on with us. And it's been a pleasure. I just talked to him a little bit before the stream, and he has discipline, knowledge, wisdom when it comes to writing a book, and he's going to go into his new release. But first off, we're going to start with a huge announcement for Aethon. Last week I said I feel like there's more stuff that I can't share than I can. I've gotten permission to share one of those announcements. Aethon Books is creating a new branch called Aethon Games. We are going to be making a few card games and board games, and that is part of one of the reasons that I came on to Aethon, is to assist with that and growing, while not, of course, reducing any of our ability to pay attention to quality books and quality book releases. So I have a 30-second commercial here for you to explain our first game better than ever I could. It's Dungeons and Flagons, a modifier game for your D&D gameplay. Here you go.
Dungeons and Flagons is a drinking game you play during your favorite tabletop RPG, based on funny tropes you experience in-game. Separate the drink if and draw if cards and pull out the picture of the critical dice rolls. Have the game master flip over several draw if cards behind the screen or before the table. When the conditions on the draw if card are met, draw a drink if card. The person or persons the drink if card describes then drinks. Get yours by supporting it on Kickstarter.
All right, so if y'all have any interest in D&D, and of course, if you drink alcohol during those campaigns, which many of us do, you can take a look at the Kickstarter, basically pre-page, tiny.cc/DNFkick, and just put your email in there if you want more information on that. And of course, we may be making more announcements as that comes out. That's being released November 2nd to start off the Kickstarter. And we'd be happy to have your support and happy to have y'all's basically just support as we get more and more games released. Because this is a fun thing that I've been doing for a while, creating games for my friends. And of course, many of us play D&D, so this one seemed to make sense to start with. Now on to the big stuff. We have 3 books that are released today, starting out with War Undying, Book 3, Bloodmancer. It's a military sci-fi, and it is the completion of a trilogy. And we're really proud of Indy Redding for that one. I'm going to read the first couple of sentences. When the Emini fleets arrive at Primitia, there was only one name to rally under, the Bloodmancer. With Author and Fars at his side, Richard Stavros had become so much more than a technomancer. His powers had grown beyond what the guild could have ever taught him. So if you have been reading the first 2 books and you've been looking forward to this third installation, we are very excited, and congratulations, Indy Redding, for really finishing your trilogy. Next up, we have a post-apocalypse, Territory Wars Book 1, Scourge, by Devin C. Ford. Devin has put out a lot of amazing books recently. And the first little bit about Scourge: what could test a Marine more than all-out war? The Scourge. A simple distress beacon, a mining colony in the outer reaches, supposedly another routine deployment for Mike Barton of the Combined States Marine Corps. But what they find on the surface is unlike anything anyone had ever encountered. So those are 2 books that we have released. And of course, we have Jamie McFarlane with us right here, right now, to talk about Drakon Prince. So, Jamie, welcome to the stream. And, just kind of popped up, didn't it? I apparently put that one up as a JPEG instead of a PNG. So we'll just hide that for now. So welcome, Jamie, to the stream. Please tell us all about this amazing new book that a lot of people are excited about.
Hey, thank you, John. So Drakon Prince is, well, if you follow much of the many of the stories I write, I write an awful lot of science fiction, and that's been kind of my main entry into the indie world of writing. But kind of near and dear to my heart is the fantasy universe. And so I was talking to one of my readers about that in a private chat that we have. And I said, man, I just, I really miss the epic fantasy, but I kind of want to get a new twist on it. And he said, well, gosh, have you ever read any LitRPG? And I said, I don't even know what you're saying. And there was just kind of that sort of a conversation. And so he put me on to a couple of fantastic books. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is a fusion of epic fantasy with Dungeons and Dragons, which I was a huge fan of when I was younger. I used to play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. And we started off, I'm so freaking old that, we started off in the version 1 of Dungeons and Dragons. So John and I were talking about that earlier. And it's like, and then I was complaining about how 4th edition kind of made it hard for me to figure out what was going on and all the rest of that. But really, for me, the excitement of LitRPG or game lit is this kind of, I can pull these items together because we love to see character progression. And what better way to see character progression than with leveling? And you don't just have to stick with levels. You can see this progression of, well, not only did I level in this way, but I gained these new attributes, and now I'm a little bit stronger for it. And so that was very exciting for me to read, because that's just I can't remember the title of the book I was reading, but the author was writing about how the world around this character was just getting better because of his efforts. So he was building a town, and he was also leveling up. And I thought, wow, this is a fantastic story because of these elements that you can just, you don't just have to kind of wonder what's happening. You actually see the details of that advancement, the character advancement, the physical advancement of the town around him, the impact that had to the surrounding landscape, and kind of how it irritated the folks around him. So I thought, man, these are fantastic. This is a fantastic way to bring that together. So in Drakon Prince, I actually wrote that in my off time. So I'm a full-time writer. And so every Wednesday, Thursday, I write for the entire day, both days. And that's my time that I set aside, and I do it just completely. Well, so my off time is any other time that I feel like writing. I'll just sit down and, kind of write whatever I want to write. So sometimes, as authors, we are working through a book and we're like, man, I don't want to write this today. Well, I don't do that. If it's my day to write that book, I'm writing that book, but that's only Wednesday, Thursday. So any other day, then I can just I'm free to do whatever I want. And so that's really where Drakon Prince came from, this is my free time to write. So I was really looking forward to every night. We got everything done around the house, and I would sit down and start writing this, and it flowed so easily because it was just nothing like I'd ever done before. So I know I'm stringing a lot of so's together here. That's just
you hit on an amazing point for writers: the discipline of writing, the discipline of an art, versus just calling ourselves artists, just calling us like, oh, I'm writing a book here on the side. You as a professional have a discipline, and you have to push through these things. And there were some things we already talked about, some difficulties on the lit RPG genre, which is how much of that stats share.
And so something I did when I started off in Drakon Prince, I started off tracking experience points, and I built a scale, and I've got, notebooks on, your basic. So first level 1 is 0 to 1,000 experience points. Then it's level 2 is 1,000 experience points to 2,250. And, the basic scale where we've all been kind of taught at different points. And so then I was tracking that, and I'm tracking that for multiple characters. And I finally, my mind just started to blow apart. I'm like, how can I keep track of this? This is ridiculous. Because I'm not writing every day, the numbers aren't in my head. And, is that the right number of experience points for that particular monster that we ran into, or what appears to be a monster sort of thing? And so just things got very complex. And then I read another book, and I saw this guy say, and he just admitted it outright. He said, I went to percentages. Your progression to the next level became a percentage of, which works perfectly. There's nothing bad about it. It's because that's what you're looking at when you look at those numbers. Like, well, how far away am I? And what's the percentage? And then things got a lot easier, because then I could say, well, what percentage of the progression of this character to the next level was this mob that he runs into? And that's just a really easy thing for me as an author to think about. It's like, oh, well, this was a little mob. It's not going to push him ahead very far. Or this was so epic that, you know, that person's going to get at least another level, maybe two, because it was just so crazy. And you have to think about that. Does experience cap out at the next level and stop you? Do you get your health point or your hit points back? I mean, you just have all these kind of fun things to work with. But those are fun, right? Those are exciting details.
So, in a nutshell, what is Drakon Prince about?
Yep, you bet.
I know a little bit, and
so Drakon Prince is a coming of age story. So my main character is Theo Chiton, TK. He's kind of a wimp. He's trying to work his way through school. He's working in a bar. Kind of has a hot crush on his best friend, who really doesn't see him in the same way, because he's kind of a wimp, and she's this, you know, very nice looking young lady, and she's a waitress in the same bar and all that. Well, one night, he's been having these bad headaches, and he's not sure what's going on, and that becomes relevant in the story. But ultimately, what happens is the bar manager actually, you know, kind of starts doing things with Bethany that he shouldn't be doing, and TK steps in and he just absolutely gets his ass kicked. I mean, it's not even pretty. And so he's laying in the alley behind the bar. He's been fired. He's got some broken bones, and he sees a game, a HUD pop up, and it says, "Hey, do you want to accept your future as a dragon, and Drakon is what we actually talk about there. But do you want to accept your future?" And he's like, of course he thinks he's nuts. Well, I mean, anybody would think they're nuts. And but so he's kind of trying to crawl his way out of that, and then he does. He says, "You know, what do I care, fantasy or otherwise? I need to go save Bethany. This bad thing is happening." And he ends up accepting that. Well, and in accepting that, he kind of puts a mark on his back, but he ends up becoming a level 0 Drakon, and that what that means is that he will, in the end, when he finally gets a big enough level, he actually has a full dragon form available to him. Initially, he has just kind of this Drakon form, which is kind of think of like what a werewolf looks like in kind of half shift, but for a dragon. So he kind of grows and a little more muscular, better, lot better at martial skills and that sort of thing. But it also kind of messes with his mind a little bit, because now he's a lot more aggressive, and he has very territorial and things that you might expect from a dragon. And so, you know, the big part of the story is that dragons don't like other dragons. And so he enters the world to save his friend Bethany, but now he's got to actually save himself from the dragons who are now hunting him down, because, well, he's got kind of a mysterious background with his family. And so, you know, kind of fast forward, and I won't give too many things away here. He has to level up to be able to survive. And then he figures out, not only do I have to level up to survive, I need to level up both myself and my party, the people who are with me, but I've actually got a homestead that my parents have abandoned for whatever reason, and he doesn't know why. But I've got this castle that I've got to level up. So we learn about how he levels up that castle and is able to defend himself and his people against this dragon that really is just really ready to, you know, pull his head off, and tries on several occasions. So it's really a coming of age story, though. So that's kind of and those, I love coming of age stories. I love that moment where a person realizes, well, this is who I am. Can I actually survive who I am?
Yeah.
So I get passionate. You got to stop me, John.
Well, I don't need to buy the book anymore. You can. No, I love it. I think I honestly feel like that for the parts that I've read so far in the book, it does have a unique feel to it as a lit RPG. A lot of times it's just like, oh, just teleport into anywhere. Random character's been pulled out. I see a lot of recurring themes, either an overpowered theme or a slow rise to hero, but I think that there's a lot of good stuff out there, and I'm glad you've taken a dip into it, almost returned home a little bit from your D&D days. How much do you feel D&D, and you said you were actually a dungeon master and world building, how much do you feel that affects you as a writer and in your thought process when telling a story?
Tremendously. I think that, well, here's an interesting background. My dad was a pastor, so I was a preacher's kid growing up. And so playing Dungeons and Dragons in the 70s with your dad as a preacher in a small town was kind of a risky thing to do, right? I mean, it was, and my dad actually got pushback on it and said, you shouldn't do it. But my mom really stepped forward and said, you know what? He's not worshiping the devil. This is not what's happening here. This is a creative outlet. And so really that creative outlet, I feel like developed my skills as a writer, because when you start building campaigns, and you know this, John, because you're a big D&D guy, but as you build those campaigns, you've got to figure out, where are we going? What are we doing? Those are the exact same skills a writer uses to put together a story. What is what's the apex here? If your party just kind of rolls along, oh, it's all kobolds. Look here, they handed us, this giant chest of gold. Hey, we're great. That's not fun at all. You've got to have that challenge. You've got to have those existential threats. And really at the kind of the peak of a campaign, you need to make sure that I've got to do something kind of grandiose to actually make it through. Well, that's what a story is. I mean, that's the essence of a story. So I really feel like Dungeons and Dragons was just people telling a story with 5 or 6 different people involved. And I think for me, that's all is very related.
Yeah, there's a number of major authors that they come up with a system and they run their players through it, and it helps them build the entire new magic system or the entire world, fleshing it out. And I think it's fantastic. I've got several people that I trust that are major creative, that I don't want to tap into them in the effect of, here, read my book and tell me what I should do or give me some ideas. Instead, I could just be like, hey, D&D tonight, we're playing in my my book world, and this is the situation. You're in prison, you can't talk, blah, 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 blah.
What are you going to do?
So
that's pretty brilliant. I'm very impressed by that, John. I like that a lot.
Thank you. We're in the process of doing that right now. So I want to tap into your experience and your discipline as an author real quick, because we definitely have some authors that are watching, and aspiring authors. You have written, I believe it's 36, 37 books in about 6 to 7 years.
Yep.
That is a lot of books. How do you do it? What are some of the keys that we can take away and expand ourselves and become better authors through your hard knocks?
So I feel like I'm evoking my dad here as I talk. It really is about sit your butt in the chair, and we were talking about that earlier. You've got a time where you go sit your butt in the coffee shop, but sit your butt in the chair, and you don't get done. You're not done until you reach whatever that reasonable goal is. For me, it's a matter of math. I figured out that my books are generally about 26 chapters long. So that's how I know how to pace my way through. They're all about 3,500. Every chapter is about 3,500 words. If I write 2 chapters in a week, I'm going to be able to finish 4 books in a year. And if I just don't let myself off the hook, it happens. It doesn't matter if I'm promoting. It doesn't matter if I'm sending emails. It doesn't matter. None of those things. Nothing else matters. 2 chapters a week, no matter what. And I don't miss it. I don't give myself excuses. I don't let myself go write something else on my appointed days. And we all talk, writer's block is a real thing. And so what I oftentimes will do is, while I'm having some writer's block and I don't want to do what I'm doing, I will actually just write and know that it's a bunch of crap. And then I'll come back and erase it. And I'll say, yeah, I don't get to keep it. But a lot of times when I do that, I get through it. It's like, oh, it was this conversation that was really hanging me up. Or I'm introducing a new problem. I can't do this thing I just did. And that's okay. Get rid of it. I think the second piece of advice I'd give is, especially for newer authors, write every day. I don't care if it's 100 words, 50 words, 300 words. It doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be, and it doesn't matter what you write, because what you're trying to do is develop that skill of how do I bring that idea down, and how do I tie it back into the story? and get it onto the keyboard. And so really, and I still write. I mean, Drakon Prince, I didn't write that on my normal schedule. I wrote Drakon Prince while I was watching TV with my wife. Not that I was actually paying attention to the TV, to be completely honest.
I'm guilty of the same thing. My wife will be watching something and I'm like, zone out, right?
Right. Well, she'll ask you, hey, John, what did you see that? Wasn't that funny? You're like, no, I don't know.
No. That's funny. So a little bit of tough love to the writers there from Jamie. And I think it's necessary. I think too often we get into the artist world in the sense of, I don't feel like writing today. I'm not in my creative mode. And how do you push through? Discipline. Unfortunately, the worst word in the world to hear as a young writer. So we have someone that wants to know what's on the picture in the background that looks like it's moving. Do you have a reflection there on the picture?
Oh, there's probably
reflection of a window.
This which picture? I can't figure out.
That's that one.
That is that's a picture of Lesser Prince. Hang on.
It looked like something from Harry Potter there for a second because it was shifting. I think there was some leaves.
Oh yeah, no, it's not shifting. That's this. It's a epic fantasy. This is actually the first book I wrote, but it's not the first book I published. So it's just the cover art, and so that's another thing that I do that I think young authors ought to do. Celebrate your books as the giant victory they are. So that's I can't point because it'll make no sense. I have to figure it out. But that's a big old picture of that cover without the title work on it, and that probably cost me $250 to get framed and all the rest of that. But that's me celebrating getting that book done. I spent a quarter of a year or a third of a year writing that book. Well, actually, that one longer. I spent 6 months of my life writing that book. You should celebrate that. Feel great about it. I've got a lot of. If I showed you around the room, I've got a lot of framed pictures of major milestone books, and I'm super proud of them. Even that gun, if I could point at it, that's actually a present that I bought myself when I finished my first thriller book.
So a 22 Winchester or something?
It's a. Well, I'm not going to be able to say what it is. It's a Henry.
Old Western.
Yeah, it's a Henry rifle. It's actually a 357 mag Henry rifle. But it's so I wrote a kind of a cowboy-esque trilogy where it's a suspense thriller mystery type of thing, Longmire sort of genre. And so I'm like, what way could I celebrate getting that trilogy, done? Well, I talked my wife into it, and she's like, "Oh, really?
Got yourself a classic piece of history there."
Yeah, and it's a fun gun to shoot, but with glasses on, it's really not very easy to aim.
Let's see. We got some people in the comments. We got Peter saying, "Jamie, thank you for your swell prose and wonderful characters. So glad the saga will continue." We have a question from Cody. Do you have a book you wrote but never published?
Yes. I have lots of books that are, and those are typically not completely finished, but they're just sitting there. So I've got a lot of books that are sitting in 20, 40, 60% complete level, and I just can't, I got lost in them or lost on them, and I can't figure out how to finish them. And so I don't know what to do with them. And fortunately, those weren't my main. I mean, most people know me for Privateer Tales, and so that occupied most of my time until I became a full-time writer. So I don't have any Privateer Tales sitting out there, so don't ask. They're not available.
Well, that's good. Do you think LitRPG is going to get your attention again as a writer?
I kind of want to see how the comments come back, right? This is definitely a toe in the water sort of thing. I think definitely epic fantasy. I'll come back to that. I really like young adult epic fantasy for some reason. I guess I'm just kind of stuck back in time.
There's something magical about the young adult genre itself, in the sense I think people sometimes just want an easy read. People want to get lost, and sometimes they don't want to think about the difficulties of the world, so they don't want to get into the political intrigue sometimes.
Right.
And that's why it's got some mass appeal on that front.
Yeah, so that's definitely it. I love fantasy. That's for me a lot of fun. I love the fact that in young adult, you're pretty much guaranteed that you're not going to have any heavy elements in there. You're going to, there'll be scary things happening certainly, but it's just a kind of a different level. And so I agree with you, John. You end up skipping some of those really heavy details.
Take a look at this. I can show the comments right up here. We've got a question from Danny. Got here late. What was the inspiration for Drakon series? Great choice, going with Peter Burkrot. Burkrot? I don't know the name. Sorry. I
don't know how to say it.
Apparently, he's a very talented narrator, and I'm excited to hear him. So
fantastic. Yeah. So the inspiration for Drakon is, I actually had a character in Asheron's Call called Drakon Prince, and he never got to become a dragon. So that was really upsetting to me. And yes, Asheron's. If you don't know what Asheron's Call is, it's a video game from kind of a long time ago. And so that was the character. So the idea of a dragon shifter, I think everybody kind of has dreams about that. I think what if I could just be more than I am? Wouldn't that be pretty cool? I mean, it's basically fantasy superhero. This is the best superhero you could be if you're in fantasy universe. So that's it.
That's very cool. Very cool. Let's see. Yeah. So we have just a wonderful group watching right now, and it seems quite a few fans are in the comments right now. So showering you with support. I think that was a fantastic interview. Thank you for your time, and I definitely want to have you on. And I think just getting your insight from and your perspective as a professional writer and your discipline is just amazing. And I think we need more conversations like the ones we had before, where the discipline is necessary, not just feeling like an artist, but being an artist in the sense of a trade, a craft. So I appreciate your time very much. And I definitely look forward to having you again, maybe on your next book release. And
sounds great.
For those of you that haven't seen it yet or just joining us, we have the book right here. Going to cover up part of your face because I didn't export it correctly. Drakon Prince, beautiful cover. I feel like Aethon has, if we do one thing really well right now, it's book covers. Aethon, we have some amazing, talented artists that we work with, and so that's just a beautiful book cover. And
yeah, they did a good job of that.
So looking forward to completing the book. Released today. Everyone go pick up a copy. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
All right. Thank you, John.
Thank you, all the readers and authors out there in the audience, and tag your favorite upcoming book and book author in the comments. We want to know what you're looking forward to reading. Talk to you all next week.